The Sony Xperia Z5 is the latest flagship smartphone to come out of Sony's camp. Just don't let the serious jump in model number over the Z3 Plus get you. What we have here is the same small iterative update like last time. There are only a few new features, which is not surprising, considering the Z5 comes less than 6 months after its predecessor. Apart from the fingerprint reading power button on the side and the new 23 megapixel camera on the back, the two smartphones are almost identical. Are those two worth the upgrade, or are there any changes we may be missing? Be sure to stick around as we try to find out. On the outside, the Sony Xperia Z5 doesn't strike as new when compared to the Xperia Z3 Plus, but there are a few subtle differences. On one hand, the matte sides now mark the gradual departure for Sony to a new understated design language for its future products. The Z5 is also slightly thicker and 9 grams heavier than the Z3 Plus. The device feels nicely solid in the hand, and the difference isn't obvious out of the gate. Unfortunately, the added weight and thickness doesn't mean the battery has gotten any bigger, just on the contrary. What you get in return for the extra body fat is the all-new 23 megapixel camera. It's got a wider 24mm lens, a new hybrid face detect autofocus, and improved digital video stabilization, though sadly, no optical one. The signature Sony power button is no more, but what you get is a flat, wider key that can read your fingerprint. It's quick at that too. It's among the fastest readers we've seen. Sony has kept the dual glass design on both sides of the aluminum frame. The front panel hides two front-facing speakers on the top and bottom and has an otherwise flush flat surface, covered by tempered glass. The placement of the speakers is great, though the speakers aren't very loud. We rank them as only below average in our loudness test. This time around, Sony has used frosted glass surface on the back, which is another way of saying it's matte and the finish is clearly superior as it doesn't get all smudged up through the day. The 5.2-inch LCD is yet again just 1080p in the resolution, but it's perfectly sharp by our books. It's also adequately bright, although it's not as bright as the one on Xperia Z3 Plus. The same goes for its average contrast ratio. It seems for some reason Sony is using an inferior screen this time around. The company has a flip case tailor-made for the Xperia Z5. It has a window with its own lock screen and allows you to use the camera or widgets. The case connects to the Xperia Z5 via NFC, which activates the window interface and offers you a theme that matches the case color. What's most important, however, is that the Xperia Z5 is still the only waterproof flagship around, if you don't count the Xperia Z3 Plus, of course. The Xperia Z5 launches with Android Lollipop, or rather Sony's take on it. The software is clean and very close to the stock aesthetic, but Sony has mixed in its multimedia apps like Movies, Walkman, and Album, and its Xperia-themed widgets. Icons are bigger throughout the UI, giving the Xperia Z5 a very Nexus-like appearance. Once you get to your recent apps, you'll see Sony's small apps, which can run on top of the interface but are not resizable and cannot be turned off. Sony's flagship Z5 comes with the latest revision of the Snapdragon 810 chipset, and our unscientific observations suggest it runs cooler compared to the Z3 Plus. The 3GB of RAM sure add to the buttery smooth performance too. In CPU tests, the new Xperia Z5 mostly came out on top of its predecessor, but generally failed to knock out the Samsung's Galaxy S6 and Note 5 and the Apple iPhone 6s Duo of their top spots. The graphics performance, however, seems to be better than on the Galaxy smartphones, probably due to the lower screen resolution that it has to deliver. Sony is not the first phone maker to reduce the battery capacity on its latest flagship. Fortunately, the Z5 battery life hasn't suffered. For all we know, the Sony Xperia Z5 even outperformed its predecessor in some of our battery tests and earned itself a higher endurance rating. It's been a while since we've seen upgrades in the camera department on Xperia phones. The Xperia Z5 houses a new multi-aspect sensor, which can churn out high-res photos in both 4:3 and 16:9 aspect ratios. So are the photos any better? Well, yes and no. The resolve detail is higher from the newer camera, and quite noticeably so. Even with the wider lens, the camera is able to capture more fine detail. Even though its performance is a mixed bag, one thing's for sure, there is not a single aspect where the new camera is worse than the one on the Z3 Plus. There's still a lot of digital noise in the shadows, even in broad daylight, and it's even worse in low light. There's also a lot of sharpening going on. There's also some smudging at random spots across some photos, which doesn't affect every photo, but you never know when and where it's going to strike. And finally, the image quality dips severely around the image borders, suggesting the camera lens is less than stellar. On the positive side, the camera lens is extremely wide at 24mm, and that allows you to fit more in the frame easily. It's also among the select few camera phones which can shoot in a non-native 16:9 aspect ratio without cropping away a third of the sensor information. As for video recording, it comes at 4K resolution, just as before, but it's quite shaky. Other than that, 4K videos are very good, just as expected. At 1080p, you get the help of the improved digital video stabilization. The selfie camera can snap 5 megapixel images that offer good detail overall and is wide enough without being obscenely wide. Where the front-facing camera is lacking is color rendering. Quite often skin tones and dark objects come out with an unflattering magenta tint. The Xperia Z5 is supposed to be the best from Sony, the absolute attention hog that beats its predecessors in every way, but it isn't, not entirely so. The fingerprint scanner is here finally, and it's as fast as they get, thank you very much. The chipset is as powerful but doesn't heat up as much, so far so good. The camera is good and its sensor is brilliant. The issues that have plagued its cameras for ages now are still here and spoil the overall great imaging experience. We'd also love to see Sony finally implement an optical stabilization system. There's a lot to like about the Xperia Z5, but a lot of it is the same that we liked about the Z3 Plus just a month ago, if you catch our drift. The industry has seen even smaller upgrades than a new camera and fingerprint scanner, and we can live with that, but the price premium over Sony's own Z3 Plus is hardly worth it. So we suggest you wait a few months for the Z5 price to settle, unless someone gets you one of those deals you just can't turn down.